Everyone, Brick City Brown Chick coming at you with another episode. And today I want to talk about uh, a subject that hits home for me. And the title of this episode is the E word. And in this case, the E word is empathy. And a question I want to ask at the very beginning is, when did empathy become such a terrible thing? I'm very curious. I have my own ideas about when it happened, but I'd like to hear everybody else's feedback. When I was a kid, empathy meant having compassion for something that someone else was going through. So, for example, if you had a friend and their relative died, you may not have been able to relate to that on a personal level. You may never have had anyone close to you die, but you had empathy for that person. You were sympathetic. You had some understanding that they were going through a hard time. And that was something, especially as Christians, that we all inspired to have, right? I went to Catholic school. Catholic schools, I don't know about now, but back in the day, were very big on getting kids to understand that part of their responsibility as a Christian was to have empathy for the less fortunate. So, as a kid, I learned about, we'll just call it fundraising, really early, like 7 or 8 years old. We would go around and ask our friends and neighbors to donate, used to be quarters. And we used to have these little booklets that had slots for the quarters to go in. And we would send those quarters to Catholic organizations overseas, to the Middle East, or to Africa, or to poorer parts of Europe. And the money would be used to help the poor and the sick and the infirmed. And as kids, we felt really good that we could contribute to making the world a better place, which is one of the huge tenets of Catholicism, and especially in the Catholic education system. They really wanted kids to understand that your life as a Christian is not supposed to be all about you. You are supposed to have the depth and the understanding to give back, to help people who could not help themselves. So that is what I grew up with, being a Catholic kid and going to Catholic school. But I also got that reinforced in my household by my Christian parents. My parents were very big on helping me understand, especially as an only child, that everything was not about me, that I was not going to get everything I wanted whenever I wanted it, because that's not how the world works, and that I needed to have compassion for people who were not fortunate enough to have the life I had. And I had some real tangible examples in my young life of how that played out. My best friend when I was a kid was a girl named Lisa. Lisa was the oldest of 7 children. The first 3 kids were her father's children, and the last 4 were her half siblings, were her mother's children by her current, when I knew her, live-in boyfriend. And there were tons of complications in her life because her father was not in the picture and her stepfather was not always the nicest of people. And so I shared a lot of what I had with her because A, she was my best friend and I wanted to do that. But also B, I understood that her life with her mother and her stepfather and her 6 siblings was totally different than my life with my married parents and me being an only child. So I got to understand a lot of what I call empathy in action from my friendship with her. The other benefit I've always seen from being a part of Gen X is I grew up in the time of what I call celebrity compassion, of Band Aid, which was a song called Do They Know It's Christmas? They raised money for the Ethiopian famine in the 1980s. USA for Africa, which was the American version, which raised money for African famine, and Farm Aid, which raised money for farmers who were struggling here in America. I was able to see Live Aid live when it was on, which is hard to believe that was 40 years ago now, but it was a bunch of musicians coming together to raise money. And so that was one of the outgrowths of the 80s that always stuck with me. And so I come from both a personal experience and a generational experience of the importance of empathy. Now, sometime between my 20s and my 50s, so let's say over the course of 30 years, empathy has become a bad word, especially among men. I hear men saying things now like, oh, if you have empathy or sympathy, then you're a wuss, or you're a simp, or you're a beta male, or whatever the new phrase is. And I find that both disturbing, just from a personal standpoint, and also horrifying. It's like you're now saying that being empathetic to people who have less than you or have not had the advantages you have had is a bad thing. I don't understand how you're able to put together being empathetic is bad, but also calling yourself a Christian, because those two things go together, they're not separated. So I'm not sure how we got here, but we're here now. And the question is, what do we do about it? When I left college, when I graduated and I went out into the world on my own, I'd spent a lot of time volunteering places and donating money to causes I believed in. I have not been a volunteer anywhere for several years, and that's just how my life has played out. But I have never stopped donating money to causes and organizations I believe in, because again, I want to be able to, when I leave this world, whenever that is, I want to be able to leave this world better than I found it. And if the only way I am able to do that, like currently in my life, is through donating money, then that's what I'm going to do. Everybody's got their own causes. Everybody donates money, or most people donate money to things they personally believe in. And I'm no different. I give money to homeless organizations, to animal organizations, to organizations that work with disabled veterans. I have a list of places that I donate money to every year, to Native American organizations, things that are important to me and things that I believe in. Not everybody's going to have the same belief system, right? Not everybody's going to want to give money to the same kinds of organizations. But I'd venture to say that most of the people I grew up with, especially the people I went to school with, have the same view of the world because we all grew up with that Catholic school mentality. In the United States as a whole, we have decided that everybody just needs to figure out their own stuff, right? We've decided that we want leadership in this country who are cold and calculating and mean and nasty, and empathy is not a word that enters not only the president's mind, but any of the people who work for them. They have no compassion. They don't care what happens to people. And that has trickled down from the administration into the Supreme Court and into Congress. When I listened to Congress people talk about this horrific law now, but when it was a bill, the president's budget, and say things like, well, those disabled people are just going to have to get jobs. And, well, if we cut your Medicare and you die, everybody's going to die at some point. What? That's where we are as a country, where we're just flippant about people dying or about people being disabled. That's really where we are. It's really a horrendous thing to see and to experience. And if you told me 15 or 20 years ago that this is where we would be as a country, I would have laughed. I would have said, America's not going to go that far backwards, because we have not always been a compassionate country, despite what people will tell you. We treated Native Americans and Black Americans and Japanese Americans like crap. And that continues. We had reached a place in America where people who were not white were getting caught up to white people. Not getting ahead of white people like white people think, but getting caught up. And white people in America decided absolutely not. We will not tolerate these people who we barely tolerate reaching our level of success. We have had the current president of the United States say that diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is not okay. That it is not good to want a diverse workforce or school system or college education system, that none of that is okay. That white is right, and that is how America is going to proceed. And most of white America has stayed absolutely silent because they feel the same way he feels. They hate the same people he hates. And so they cheer on his crusade to make America white again and to make white supremacy what America is all about. And part of doing that successfully is making empathy a terrible concept, is making people feel if I'm empathetic to these other people, that makes me weak, that makes me sad, that makes me disloyal to my whiteness. And so that's where America has decided to land. And unless we all, those of us who believe that this is bullshit and nonsense, unless we all band together and put our other differences aside to proclaim how wrong this is and how this is not an America we want to live in, America as we knew it will be gone and it will never come back. Something I hear people say a lot, especially recently, is this is only going to be 4 years. And 4 years from now, he will be gone and we can pick up the pieces and go back to what America was. It's not going to happen that way, people. It's really not. This man and his goons and his sycophants are tearing apart America, the Constitution, our laws, our regulations. There will be no returning to what America was, because what America was will no longer exist. If the 14th Amendment is overturned or amended to the point where it no longer means what it currently means, that is going to devastate the entire non-white population of America. That is not an exaggeration. That is not an overstatement. That is fact. And so we all need to wake up and understand what we are losing day by day by day by day that this administration remains in power. So I want everybody this week to ask themselves, have they changed over the last 10 or 15 years? Do they feel less empathetic toward people not like them, toward poor people, toward Black people, toward brown people? Do you cheer people being ripped out of their homes and their churches and their schools? Or do you ask why that is happening and is it really necessary? I want everybody to think about that this week because we are really in strange, dark times. And if we allow these people to continue with their march toward white supremacy, we will lose the country we've all grown up with, and it will never, ever come back. I want to thank everybody for listening this week. If you are not subscribed to this podcast, there is a button down here just below my head somewhere. Please subscribe. Hit the notification button so it will tell you when I upload videos so you can be among the first to see them. And I look forward to talking to you all next week. Take care.